we were like, there's no way the Eagles are eating this dead money. It had never happened before at that time. It looks
Yeah,
quaint
right. I
now.
remember,
It had
yeah.
never happened in the history of football. And that's what Andrew obviously was a Packers executive for a long time. He's got a keen understanding of the financials of this game.
And welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, John McMullen, back with you live for another 2-hour edition of Birds 365 across the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Drop your comments down below. We'll try and get to some of them today. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Tuesday morning, my friend?
Doing well, except for, I don't know, there's some kind of internet issue, at least where I am. Cloudflare.com. Can't get the sites. What's going on? Is there some kind of catastrophe? Anybody else
I don't
getting
know,
this?
'cause I think we're not streaming to X right now. I'm wondering if X is down, and that's why our show is not pushed there. Is there some sort of
I cannot get to X right now. I can't get to a bunch of websites. And that's been going on all morning, by the way. So I didn't know if anybody else was having this problem.
I
I
had it a
assume.
little bit, but it's one of those things that I kind of just kept rolling with. But it is what it is, John. I'll keep an eye on that. Plenty to talk about here today. I do want to welcome and thank everybody for being here, John. A lot of news in Eagle Land. Always, we got a comment on our show yesterday. It was hilarious. Somebody commented on our Monday show yesterday, and said, "Wow, this was an amazing football discussion before the chaos ensues this week." And right on cue, after we got that comment, I started to see all the chaos ensuing here in Eagle Land. Plenty to talk about, John. Let's start with Lane Johnson, John. Yesterday, diagnosed with a Liz Frank sprain. It looks like he'll be out 4 to 6 weeks. I would say at a minimum. Part of me feels like that's an optimistic timeline. John, what do you know about the Lane Johnson injury? And then we'll dive into maybe how this affects this team right now.
Yeah, I think it's optimistic as well. I think, when people heard second opinion, I think they're thinking, diagnosis shopping, trying to get back on the field. I think it might be the negative
Yeah,
direction.
right.
I think there might be doctors chiming in with, it'd be better if you get surgery, that type of thing. But all speculation. I gave Nick Sirianni an opportunity to clarify some things. I got the we'll see. That's just Nick's nature, even though it's obvious he's going to miss some time. So I would say best case scenario, 4 to 6 weeks. Worst case scenario, he's done for the season. He's going to see Dr. Robert Anderson. Obviously, he's the top guy in the country when it comes to these types of injuries. So I think whatever he says is what's going to happen. That's typically how it shakes out. So still in the wait and see approach. But I think the best case would be, and I said that yesterday when we did a football 24/7. I mean, my focus would be on the postseason. This team and Dallas won, and they'll have a chance to get back into it for a week if they can upset the Eagles down there. But it's pretty clear the Eagles are going to win the division. And for them, it's about the number 1 seed. And they're in a good position, to say the least. So obviously, you're not going to push them on the field if those games are not meaningful late in the season. So I would place my focus on the postseason.
Yep, John, I think that's good. That's a good. That's obviously the optimistic view if Lane can return. John, I do think the other thing that's maybe a valuable talking point here would be if Lane were to return. That might not get a game shape a little bit. No, I mean, if you're missing 6 weeks, and obviously it's a lower leg injury, and now I get it. Lane is he's kind of a freak of nature, so he's not typically the guy that I would worry about with stuff like that. But he's obviously older, and when you have a lower body injury, you can't work out as much. Maybe some stuff in the pool and some upper body stuff, but that's definitely something to keep an eye on. John's going to be Fred Johnson, right? Fred Johnson will be the fill in there until Lane potentially returns.
Yeah, and sort of a double pronged effect because they've kind of found something with this big package, this big Fred package, and that's is out the window. They did roll it out with Matt Pryor a little bit, and they'll continue to do that, but we'll see if it's as effective. And then just the natural downturn from Lane to Fred, with all due respect to Fred, he's not Lane Johnson, but he has been, everybody, every time this happens and Lane's out, everybody runs and says, oh, this is their record without Lane Johnson, which is terrible.
You know what that record is? I didn't see it anywhere.
I'd love to tell you, but internet's not working.
Yeah.
So it's bad though. But last year, I mean, Jordan Mailata had an injury. Lane didn't play late in the season. I think Fred started 5 games. They won all of them. Might have been 6. He started the early one. So they were 5-1. And he's played significant snaps in 3 or 4 games this year, and they've won. So it's a little bit different than what was early in Lane's career when the numbers were just dramatically horrible. They have been able to persevere a little bit better with Fred Johnson. It's not going to look the same. It's not going to be the same, especially when you're trying to get the running game going. And it doesn't bode well for the offense not being a slog the rest of the regular season. But I think they can persevere better than they have in the past. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I joked yesterday. It's hey, if we were winning with our offense, this would be a big deal. And this isn't to delegitimize Lane at all, but the offense is already bad, so it is what it is. Obviously Lane is a big loss, though. John, I saw a stat last night. No team in the Super Bowl era has won the Super Bowl with the lower than the 22nd ranked yards per game team, and the Eagles right now are 25th. I believe it was the 08 Steelers who won with the 22nd ranked yards per game offense. The Eagles are the 25th ranked, so that offense got to get a little bit better. Now, heck, records are meant to be broken. I understand that you could maybe win it, but it does feel like this offense has to pick it up a little bit. We will keep an eye on that, obviously, all throughout. John, let's go to the big conversation right now. I texted you yesterday because there's this report that is out there. Derek Gunn on his post-game show spoke about Jalen Hurts, John, and I'm going to read you a couple of D Gunn's quotes. And for those who don't, the one thing that bothers me, John, about Eagles fans sometimes, and I get it, I'm an Eagles fan, so maybe clump me in, but if they hear a report that they don't like, instead of being addressing like the report, they just attack the person. Yeah, I mean, they do it with Diana Rossini. Now they're doing it with Derek Gunn. I'm like, if anybody who knows Derek Gunn, come on, man. He's not a clickbait guy. He doesn't make shit up. He's a very well-connected guy. So he says Jalen is playing his game only on the field. And, quote, people in the organization are frustrated with the quarterback situation right now. He has them over a barrel, speaking about the contract. And then he said, this is almost Carson Wentz Part 2. That's a direct quote from Derek Gunn. And it reminded me, John, when I texted you yesterday, it reminded me of a comment you talked about months ago here on Birds 365, that Jalen Hurts is aloof. And that was the word that you used to describe his relationship with some of his peers, or at least the way he's perceived in the locker room. What do you make of the report that's floating around, John, that D Gunn put out there?
Yeah, to me, there's kind of 2 parts to it, and the other stuff for people that have watched this show know about for weeks. There's some people in the building who believe he needs to be more engaged with his teammates and things like that. And that's, they had a meeting before the Rams game early in the season with a bunch of the offensive players, and that was Jeffrey Lurie's attempt to sort of remedy that before it got out of hand. I don't think it went that well, but I wasn't there, but that's, sort of secondhand information. The over the barrel stuff, I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't even know what that means, to be honest. I mean,
it more so that he knows that the cap hit is big, and he's going to play his game because he doesn't feel like he's in any danger of being benched or traded. I mean, he did bring up the cap hit of when they traded Carson Wentz. Now, I'm not saying D-Gun said he was going to be traded, but he did bring up the process of doing that and why Jalen Hurts' contract is basically unmovable at this point. That's what he was referring to.
Well, it is, but I think that's with every $50 million quarterback. I mean, that to me is sort of baked into it. Look, you make it. That's why it's so hard. Like you think the Miami Dolphins would give $50 million to Tua right now? Probably not, but they did. That's the evaluation part of it. And the Eagles have proven in with Carson, because I remember during that whole thing. I mean, a lot of revisionist history with that. The Eagles were when Nick Sirianni got hired, he was hired to fix Carson Wentz, essentially.
Yeah.
They were going to try to run it back one more time with Carson. And then Carson made it clear he didn't want to be here and all that stuff. And they made I remember talking about that with Andrew Brandt, and Jody got one right and never lets us forget about it. We were like, there's no way the Eagles are eating this dead money. It had never happened before at that time. It looks quaint now. It had never happened in the history of football. And that's what Andrew obviously was a Packers executive for a long time. He's got a keen understanding of the financials of this game. And he and I were like, well, there's no way they're eating that dead money. So the Eagles set a precedent by doing that. Now, would they do it again with this contract? No, I don't believe so. But I don't think it's at that point. I think it's I mean, my God, I get it. Look, I'm the one who tries to put, I think, as much context as possible around every aspect, win, lose, or draw with this team. But at the end of the day, they win every damn week to the point in this league, it's absurd how much they win, whatever they are, 24 out of 27. You're not moving on from the quarterback. And for the people that want them to move on from the quarterback or want them to change the offense, well, I think there's much more in that category. Be careful what you wish for, because the only way that's going to happen is if you start losing on a consistent basis. Nobody's pulling the plug on this. Why would you? Now, I think there's the assumption that everything is just static and it's one or the other. They're trying to improve every week. They're trying to get better on first. They're trying to work within what they have built to get better and to make it look better. And by the way, it's going to look better in Dallas without 40-mile-an-hour winds. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's going to look good, but it's going to look better.
Won't be consistent either, but it will be better this week.
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of people, I was, Dan Campbell, the Lions sent me all their stuff. And Dan Campbell was talking after the game yesterday, his Monday press conference. He was raving about his defense as well, as we are here in Philly. I think this is the perfect game to point out. When it's successful, it's the players. When it's not successful, it's the coaches. And I'm talking about outsiders. Oh, the defense there, the defense is great, but so was Detroit's. And Detroit's, down 4 defensive backs, whatever. So the assumption is on the offensive side is, well, Detroit's down 4 defensive backs. Why can't you move the football? Well, why couldn't Detroit move the football? Why did Jared Goff, with all due respect to the Eagles, why did Jared Goff have his worst passing performance from a completion, maybe the most accurate quarterback in the NFL? You really think that's going to happen at Ford Field inside?
Right.
The Eagles might have the same pass rush and the same dominant performance. It's still not going to be the same result. I think way too many people missed what was going on from a weather standpoint in that game. And the more people I've talked to after the game, it's like you didn't know where the ball was going. And that's what happens in those types of environments from a quarterback, receiver, yada, yada standpoint. And it affected both teams, not one team. But again, the perception is, well, the defense was great, and they were. I don't want to take it away, but they were aided also by that weather. The Detroit defense, from their perspective, was great, and they were aided by that weather. I think that's the context of that particular game. Next week in Dallas, the offense is going to play better. Are they going to play well enough? I'm not confident in saying that, but I'm confident in saying they're going to play better. But the larger, and I went down a tangent, and I apologize. They're not moving on from the quarterback. He doesn't have them over a barrel, other than all $50 million quarterbacks have their teams over a barrel. The barrel, if you're over a barrel, if there's people, that's because you misevaluated the quarterback, not the contract. And I find it very hard to believe that. I mean, Jeffrey Lurie, it starts with Jeffrey Lurie. I'm sure he hates this offense. I've never been in anything sure in my life.
Yeah.
But if you asked him again, well, you could throw for 400 yards, but you'd be 11-6 and you'd lose in the divisional round. Or you can be 14-3 and win another Super Bowl. I'm sure he's going to go Super Bowl. And there's no guarantee they're going to win it. But Jeffrey's been around for a while, and this is the best era of Eagles football ever in his ownership. But during his ownership, this is the best era of Eagles football. And I'm pretty sure he's not going to pull the plug on that because it doesn't look pretty.
Fair enough. John, what can you add or speak on, or maybe clarify the quote? And it's Derek Hunt's quote, it's not your quote, but just what your information tells you. People in the organization are frustrated with the quarterback right now. It's a direct quote from Derek Gunn. Who does that mean? Players, coaches, front office, Jeffrey Lurie,
I can't
Howie
speak
Roseman?
I can't speak for D, but I've gone for. I mean, the receivers aren't happy when there are opportunities. The ball doesn't come out. I've said this a million times. Look, they understand that they're going to be a run-first offense. They are accepting of that. But when there's meat left on the bone, and when the ball should come out, but it doesn't come out, that's where the frustration lies for the players. The coaches, I don't think it involves them, other than they're trying to get them to the point where you're trying to balance this line of, the cautious style of play and, doing things that are right there for the taking. And that's been difficult, obviously, because they've been, again, I mentioned that number. I think it's 581. I overshot it, but 581 passes and 2 interceptions since week 5 last season, which has never happened before in the history of the NFL. Never happened before in the history of the NFL. Not the Philadelphia Eagles, the history of the NFL. Nobody's ever thrown the ball 500 times and only had 2 interceptions in any span in NFL history. That's historic. And you don't do that by just willy-nilly throwing a football over the middle of the field. You don't do that. Ball's going to get tipped. Ball's going to get intercepted. So the only way you can do that is to be very cautious and very risk averse, is the term we use. That impacts the other end. You're not as explosive. That's what you're trying to balance. Trying to get more explosive, but trying to stay with that ball security. Since Nick Sirianni got here, the Eagles put this out this week. I couldn't even believe it. When they win the turnover battle, they're 40-2.
Saw that.
952 winning percentage.
It's crazy.
40-2. And Nick knew the games right away. 21, they lost to, might have been Buffalo. I don't know. And
No,
then
they beat Buffalo in 22.
I forget who they won the turnover battle and lost the game, and I can look it up real quick from Nick yesterday because he mentioned
back is Twitter is X back?
What's that?
No, X is still not back. I don't know what's going on.
So
amazing stat though, man.
Last year they lost to Washington, and there was a game in 2021.
Chiefs, Commanders and Chiefs, they're telling me in the chat.
Yeah. So the Chiefs, Chiefs in 2021 in the regular season, and then obviously, and then Washington last season. That's it. So that's their mindset. And I said, if you want to blame the coaches, I've been pretty consistently. That's where I'd start, but be careful what you wish for, because you could take off the shrink wrap, you can take off the handcuffs, whatever you want to say, and you can throw the ball all over the lot if you want to and say, well, we got great receivers, so we should be able to do it. Well, look at all these other great receivers, and they do it. They also turn the football over. Hell of a lot more than the Eagles do. So, every action has a reaction. And if you're going to be that hyper conscious over ball security, then you're going to be less apt to have explosive plays in the passing game.
No doubt about it. John, I want you to give your opinion on this. Do you believe Jalen Hurts has regressed at all?
No, from playing, I kind of look at it, everything I would say depends on your definition. I look at it as learning to play the position, because that's my biggest problem with young quarterbacks. They don't know how to play the position. I think he's evolved greatly from when he first got here. As far as what he can do and what he sees and what he can process, I think he's miles ahead of where he was when he started, not only as a rookie, but 2021, his first season as a starter. He's miles ahead. So it depends how you evaluate it. Playing the position, yeah, not even close. Way, way past. From a fantasy football standpoint, or whatever you want to term it, number standpoint, he's regressed because of how they play. But they play that way purposefully.
Right. So it doesn't really speak on the player as much as it does the philosophy that they have on offense. John, good stuff there. Look, it is interesting conversation. I know people get upset when we talk about it, but it's out there. It's something to be discussed. They did ask Jordan Mailata about it. I don't want to say he dismissed the report or said it was wrong, but he just kind of brushed it aside and just said, I don't want to talk about my job. So that was Mailata. John, good stuff there. Good context to what D Gunn had to say. We appreciate everybody for being here. I know people hate that. They get mad at us.
Well, I mean, to your point, Start, I mean, this constant deflection of whether it's Derek or Diana, nobody's lying. Nobody cares about your favorite team. Nobody's trying to destroy your favorite team. This is information they're getting. In the case of D Gunn, that's somebody inside the organization, so blame them. And then the old, there's a lot of media illiteracy in the world over far bigger things than professional football. We're not curing cancer. We're not delving into geopolitics, where it's really
covering an inconsequential game at the end.
Where it's stuff that impacts people's lives. But there's incredible media illiteracy. So the assumption, well, if somebody says it, say it on there. The point is, there's a power dynamic in everything. Whether it's easier to explain than something like politics, which is obviously, say you should go on the record to say, the president did this or the governor did this locally or blah, blah, blah. You should go on the record. There's a great power dynamic disparity. So, people do it anonymously sometimes. Same thing in a football to a much lesser degree. The head coach, power dynamic, the quarterback, power dynamic, certainly the owner, power dynamic. So it's not like you can go out there and say, and that's, in a lot of ways, AJ as the whistleblower for this offense, because he's got his own power. He can do it, whereas other people can't do it. And when I say aloof, I mean, that's a lot of the lesser players who don't get the close-up treatment because they don't have that power dynamic. So there's a ton of media literacy, but the immediate reaction of far too many people is, I don't like this. Derek Gunn's an asshole, which anybody who knows Derek is not the case remotely. Diana, if you knew her at all, not the case. In fact, her husband is a Eagles fan, lunatic Eagles fan, by the way. So it's kind of amusing because she gets shit in her own house, I assume. So anyway, but you're right. I'm glad you brought that up. That's the immediate reaction, and we all get it. It's part of it. Whatever. That's not the point. But it's just ridiculous that you can't have a discussion because somebody's reporting something about your favorite team, which, if you want it fixed, have your favorite team fix the issues.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. Good stuff there. Appreciate everybody for being here. Good context added to the conversation by John McMullen. As always, we appreciate everybody for being here. Don't forget to hit that like button. All right, let's get to one super chat here on this topic. Jason A-Team says, part of the reason they put that D Gun story out, I think, is to scapegoat to hide the ineptitude of the coaches. Hurts isn't the only problem.
Nobody said he's the only problem. That nobody's ever the only problem with a football team, which, by the way, is the number one seed in the NFC, and now the favorite on betting markets to win the Super Bowl. So I don't think anybody's looking to scapegoat
him. In Philadelphia, baby.
So yeah, nobody's trying to hide the ineptitude of the coaches by scapegoating the quarterback who might take you to a third Super Bowl in freaking how many years?
4.
What the freak, man? Nobody's looking to scapegoat Jalen Hurts. Nobody's looking to scapegoat the coaches either yet. But I guarantee you this, Jason, if they lose in the first round of the playoffs, Jalen ain't the one getting scapegoated. Some of the coaches are going to get scapegoated.